You love the headband.
That Team Nova headband. Craig, what anime is that from?
Naruto.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Ooh, I was actually nervous.
You did a great job. We've been working on that together. Craig now knows that's the Naruto headband. As we mentioned, Erin playing Teamer Infect today, and she's got some interesting ones in this deck. The one that really caught our eye, Ren and 6. Ren and 6 in all the decks, it doesn't matter. Just play it, no matter what.
Well, that's the reason we're calling it Teamer, right? That's the red card?
Yeah, we got some sideboard action. Pyroblast is there, but this is the main pickup. Ancient Grudge, the other card. Meanwhile, over on Elliot's side, Elliot's playing Dimir Death Shadow. We saw this deck have some success a few months back on the SCG Tour. Liz Lynn piloted this to a team victory alongside Ryan Overturf. Who's their third teammate? I'm blanking on it right now.
Oh, geez, don't put me to the
I'm
test.
sorry, third teammate. I'll figure out who it was and get appropriate credit headed their way. But Liz Lynn, one of the innovators of this Dimir Death Shadow deck. Here we see Elliot picking it up. Haven't seen much of this lately. Not really sure how it lines up with the format. What are your thoughts on Dimir Death Shadow as it stands right now?
So it's an interesting deck. Like you said, we've seen it kind of cycle in and out of the format. It's only 2 colors, which is definitely a big plus for this deck. When you want to wasteland your opponents, only playing 2 colors means that it's just so much easier to always have your mana available. Also, this deck gets to play so many 1-mana threats. Like, to me, that's the biggest draw of this deck, is that in addition to the Delver of Secrets, you get Death Shadow, you get Gurmag Angler. These cards only cost you 1 mana to deploy, so it's easier to defend them with other counterspells. It's easier to still interact with the opponent.
Yeah, this is mana efficiency pushed to the extreme. Jacob Hagan, third teammate of the Ryan Overturf Liz Lynn team. Sorry about that, Jacob.
There it is. Yeah, anytime that you daze your opponent, you're like turn 1, ponder, daze what the opponent does, and then turn 2 you can't really do anything because you've only have 1 land to work with. It feels bad.
Right.
Like the daze feels very awkward.
Right.
This deck never in that situation.
Absolutely. This deck can do stuff. Well, here is Blighted Agent from Erin. Elliot's going to take a look at that top card. Are these Delvers going to flip? They are. And they're going to do so with some Thoughtseize backup. Happy to see that one against the Teamer Infect deck. Definitely want to know what your opponent's working with.
Yeah, that's a great one here.
And we are just going to go ahead and cast that Thoughtseize. I see a Force of Will, I believe, in Erin's hand. She may want to protect against this Thoughtseize. We'll see.
And there's a lot of cheap interaction between the 2 decks.
Oh, yeah.
We're looking at Dismember, 2 Fatal Push, 1 Snuff Out, and then obviously the free counterspells like Force of Will and Daze coming out of the Death Shadow decks. On the other side, you get all of your pump effects, you get your own Force of Wills. It's pretty interesting the back and forth that can happen in this matchup.
This Teamer Infect deck, another crop rotation deck. As I mentioned, card that feels somewhat underplayed in Legacy, but players starting to correct that, starting to get crop rotation back in the mix. Some good targets here. You have your Wastelands, Waterlogged Grove for some card advantage when you really have to dig to something. And of course, there's the threats. Inkmoth Nexus already on the battlefield for Erin Barich. Brainstorming now. There's that Jace's Spellbook Brainstorm one more time. Erin looks to sculpt the perfect hand here. You know that Blighted Agent is getting through, assuming it lives. How big do you want to make it? How aggressive can you be on this turn? Those are the questions Infect players really need to sort out.
Yeah, there's an interesting line here for Erin because she can either plan on winning next turn, or depending on how she plays it, she could potentially plan on winning in 2 turns. If she fires up her Inkmoth, blocks one of these, what is it, aberration? What are these when they flip again?
Insectile aberrations.
Thank you.
Well, here we start with an Invigorate on Blighted Agent. Now a 5/5. Is there a follow-up? I think the answer is no. I think we're just going to settle on 5 points of Infect. And the turn is going to pass back to Elliot. The fact that the turn is passing back to Elliot is a good indication there wasn't another pump spell.
Sure. Invigorate is just so interesting against Death Shadow.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Like that's
it is. When Death Shadow first popped up in Legacy, it was something that Jerry actually popularized years ago. I'm talking like 2010. I actually remember playing it at an Ely Cassis run tournament out in Binghamton when that was happening. So it's definitely going back years. But the first game I ever played with it, I played against someone playing Invigorate and just got absolutely destroyed.
Oh, that's so funny. This is what makes Legacy so fun, right?
Yep.
These interactions that you just never see elsewhere.
Yeah, bizarre interactions for sure. Kind of mirroring that Aria Flame thing that was going on over in Modern for a little while when Aria Flame was very effective against Death Shadow.
Yep.
Here's a Wasteland from Aaron. It's like Daze backup. Maybe another Invigorate in hand, possibly?
It might be double Invigorate.
We're going for it here regardless, facing down lethal next turn. Super incentivized to go all in. Maybe we're invigorating both these targets. Here's Invigorate on the Blighted Agent. Yeah, that's good enough. That's
Yep.
going to get it done.
Yeah, you don't even have to show the second one.
See Elliot's hand, not a lot of answers there. And Aaron Barich up a game against Elliot, Fortier, and Demir, Death's Shadow. You would think Demir has a lot of tools to deal with this matchup, a lot of cheap removal.
Yeah, he didn't see many of his deck sculpting cards and
Right.
ended up with a Reanimate just really looking mediocre in his hand that game.
Yeah, that card can be impressive in the scenarios where you're cycling Street Wraith and you get that turn one threat for just one mana, but sometimes it just rots, and you saw it happen there. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the sideboard for our two players. We'll start over on Aaron's side. She's packing one copy of Ancient Grudge, one Karakas, one Bajuka Bog, one Force of Will, two Force of Vigor, one Blue Elemental Blast, one Pyroblast, one Submerge, three Veil of Summer. Love that pickup for the Infect deck. Two Surgical Extraction, and a Dead Gone. What are you working with if you're on Aaron's side?
So I wouldn't get too carried away in this matchup. The Veil of Summer seems like the easiest inclusion. When you're setting up the early turns and your opponent tries to hit you with the discard spell, Veil of Summer is spectacular. When you're going for the win and you're using all your pump spells and your opponent tries to interact with you, again, the Veil of Summer is just spectacular. So that's the big get to me in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Why don't we head over to Elliot's side? There you see he's got three copies of Surgical Extraction, two Ratchet Bomb, two Plague Engineer, two Karakas, one Stubborn Denial, one Narset, Parter of Veils, a Liliana, the Last Hope, Flusterstorm, and Blue Elemental Blast. What do you want to do if you're in Elliot's seat? And if you're in Elliot's seat, how well do you know this matchup? Hasn't been a lot of Infect around recently.
Sure, even if you don't know this matchup very well, I think the inclusions are pretty obvious. Plague Engineer is just going to be spectacular. No amount of pump spells lets their creature live through, being a base 0/0. The Liliana, the Last Hope, another card that's just so good in these type of matchups. So I definitely want those cards to come in. And then beyond that, like maybe the Ratchet Bomb as a potential removal card, maybe not. A lot of that comes down to how many cards you want to take out of your deck for this matchup, and then it's like those fringe cards. If you have enough that you want out of your deck, those fringe cards make it in.
Well, why don't I put you on the spot here? Why don't you take a look at Elliot's deck and see if there's anything you really are desperate to get out right now? Anything you think is problematic? Do you have to cut your Death Shadows given the presence of Invigorate?
I don't think you have to.
Okay.
I think it's still a card that you want to play. Maybe you shave one or two of them because getting them lower, your opponent doesn't pressure your life total at all. So it's harder for you to get them onto the board to begin with, and then there's also that threat of Invigorate. But the Reanimate to me is specifically a card that I want out of the deck at this point. It looks so mediocre. The opponent's never killing my creatures, and putting the 3/4 on the board on turn one seems
almost
neat,
meaningless.
But like in this matchup, it's not what you want to be doing.
Yep.
So I definitely want to cut those cards, and then some of these other cards. Like I said, you can shave a couple of Death Shadows, but I think you're pretty happy with the way your main deck is set up here. So it's possible that you just want to only side in 3 or 4 cards.
Okay, we'll have to see if Elliot agrees. Well, if you're watching right now on Twitch, as I know all of you are, I don't know how else you'd be watching this, why not take advantage of September Twitch and Subway combining to bring you Subtember.
Free sandwiches for everyone.
That's unfortunately not how it works, Craig. I wish it was. Subway, pretty decent. I think it gets a bad rap sometimes. I'm on board with Subway. I like it quite a bit. They have a veggie patty. If any, store is willing to make some concessions to the vegetarian market, I generally love them.
Sure.
They have my affection.
Sure.
But it is September, and you can subscribe to the SCG Tour. You save 50% on a Tier 1 subscription right now. That gets you a few benefits. You get to get access to our emotes. You also get to vote on our quarterfinals matchup when we come back tomorrow and we're putting together our top 8. You'll have a lot of influence over what match we'll see there. And I know there's one particularly beautiful emote that I would love it if everyone just spammed it right now. The game podcast may not exist anymore. We are, of course, called the Arena Decklist Podcast now.
Of course.
But the emote's still out there. And you got to hit the chat one time with that game podcast emote. Make it happen for me.
You just have no shame.
Oh, I really don't, Craig. If they would let me drape myself in an Arena Decklist tie, an Arena Decklist jacket, I would be here pimping it all day.
No, it's just a loud bathrobe.
Yeah, sure.
That just says Arena Decklist everywhere.
No, that works for me.
You just walk around in that bad boy.
Maybe a giant Arena Decklist top hat.
Oh, sure.
I could have the Arena Decklist band just playing behind me, the Arena Decklist theme song the entire time.
There it is.
Shameless. Absolutely shameless. I think we do have some mulligans here. I think Elliot is on 6.
So these Easter dragon sleeves, some of my favorites.
Nice ones.
They're just so cute. He's got his egg. He's got his bunny ears on, flying around.
Right.
Love it.
A little bit out of season right now, but that's okay. Do what you love.
Doesn't matter.
I agree.
They're great sleeves. They're colorful. They're fun. It's not, I'm not a big fan of the nearly naked girl artwork on a lot of the stuff.
Sure, get rid of it. I like this fantasy art. Much better, much more appropriate use of our sleeve backing. Here's a Thoughtseize from Elliot Fortier. Looking at a pretty stacked hand here. I think those are 2 Noble Hierarchs, right? I believe that's the promo Noble Hierarch.
Correct. 2 different artworks there.
So going to have a think about what we're taking here.
And this hand is so redundant for Aaron. That's what's great about this hand. So you can't take away the turn 1 play because there's 2 Noble Hierarchs.
Yep.
There's tons of infect threats.
Absolutely.
So punching a hole that way seems difficult. And then there's a Planeswalker which can get back the infect threats.
Yeah. It looks like it is going to be the Planeswalker here. Ren and 6 going to hit the bin. And that's going to be it for Elliot's turn. Heading back to Aaron now. I would assume she's looking to deploy Noble Hierarch here. There is the fetch land. And it's time for Noble Hierarch. Choosing the non-foil over the foil one. What does that say about Aaron's game plan? I always choose the foil on that spot.
You are one of those.
Yeah.
A foil man.
Really am. Much to the chagrin
I guess
of my wife.
Foil person. She's not a foil person?
You know what? She kind of is. She doesn't know much about Magic. It's not really her thing. But in general, when I show her my foil card, she gets much more excited than when I show the non-foil cards. Much like myself.
She's more impressed.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know what these do, but those are shiny.
Right. That's basically me, too. I'm in the same boat. I don't know what this does, but...
You both get the vapors a little bit.
Yeah.
You're like, ooh.
Yeah. 100%. So Elliot cast Brainstorm. We mentioned not a lot of card selection last go around. Taking care of that a little bit better this time. Thoughtseize into some card selection. Follow-up threat here. Ooh, I see a Bitter Blossom sitting there for Elliot. That's a nice one.
Yeah, I like that one.
All the chump blockers. Here's a Ponder.
You have tons of chump blocks, but also it's a threat.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at Aaron's hand, it's kind of anemic, right? Like, it's got tons of threats, but they don't pressure you a lot. So right now, we didn't see any pump spells.
Right.
It's going to attack for 2 poison a turn. That's 5 turns. You've got tons of time. So if I'm on Elliot's side, I really just want to get some pressure on the board so that I can cut down on the amount of time I'm giving Aaron to draw that pump spell.
Sure. Aaron went ahead and deployed Blighted Agent. Looks like she picked up another copy of Wrenn and 6. Here's a Fatal Push. That's going to answer Blighted Agent. Good step one from Elliot's side. Generally, do not want that creature on the battlefield if you can prevent it.
And so, I think the Death Shadows are not in the deck anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the second time Elliot had a chance to fetch up Watery Grave,
right,
and put himself below that 13-point life threshold.
Right.
Both times getting Underground Sea makes me think that the Death Shadow is not around anymore.
I agree entirely. I don't think you can defend that play unless the Death Shadows aren't in the deck in any number. I think they have to all be gone. So I'm right there with you. And we know these Infect decks, they can win via damage as well. You pump up a Noble Hierarch a few times, that'll get the job done just as effectively.
I've been on the receiving end of that.
Absolutely. Some of Tom Ross's more famous wins with Infect were of that nature. The Bitter Blossom's going to do its thing now, but Barich found a nice follow-up in another Blighted Agent. That one's not going to be jump blocked. Here's the threat. It's time for Gurmag Angler. Big 5/5 body coming down. Only 1 mana. That's a fair rate. Cost reduction spells are fine. Everything's good.
I like the real big fish.
I'm definitely willing to sell out for a 1 mana 5/5.
It's kind of wild how that card's just fallen off in Modern and Legacy when it used to be such a popular threat.
Yeah, I think Grixis Death Shadow in Modern is reclaiming some metagame share right now. It's doing a nice job of finding a niche for itself, with Colligan's Command having a very effective spell to target Stoneford fetches as well as the Urza decks. But not quite in that tier 1 yet. I have Death Shadow squarely in tier 2 still. That Blighted Agent starting to do some work here. 2 Noble Hierarchs on the battlefield now. Able to get these Ink Moth Nexuses running as well if Aaron chooses. I think you probably just keep leaning on that Blighted Agent though for as long as you can. Aaron agrees.
Yeah.
There's that Reanimate again, Craig. Just sitting there rotting.
I was going to say, Elliot has that Reanimate just clogging up the hand again.
That's just going to do it. Here we see a Become Immense, followed by Veil of Summer. Is that what we saw?
Yep.
That's it. Temur Infect takes down Elliot Fortier. 2 games to 0. That was kind of a stomp, Craig.
That was. We saw Elliot just not... He didn't have the right mix where he was able to pressure the opponent while also reacting. We only saw a little bit of discard when you definitely need more discard than that in order to disrupt the Infect deck.
Right. So if the black disruption and cheap removal base deck can't hang against this Temur Infect deck, what can?
Well, like we said, the opening hand was just so redundant for Aaron's side.
Right.
That's what made it look so good, right?